Hi, I'm James Davis.
And I'm Claire Davis.
We're the Midlife Mentors, here to lift the lid on how to achieve health and happiness.
The balanced, no-nonsense way. Guys, we're really excited to have Steve on our podcast today. So, Steve, would you mind just introducing yourself? I will actually just say how I met Steve, first of all. So I watched an amazing TED Talk that Steve did a few years ago. I just found out it was a few years ago now. And I was from a completely open and honest place. As you know, we always are. I really struggle at points with my inner critic. And it was particularly loud that week and that day. So in the modern age that we are, decided to reach out to the good old YouTube and Google inner critic, and Steve's TED Talk came up. It was absolutely amazing, and it really touched my soul and my heart. I shared it with James, it did for him as well, and I reached out to Steve. So that's how we got in contact. I reached out to thank him very much for doing it in the first place. So Steve, cannot tell you how excited we are to have you here.
Same here as well. These serendipitous things, if that's the right word, they're always the best ones. Yeah. The internet can be used for good.
Yes.
It's genuinely lovely to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
It's great to have you here.
We were saying before we jumped on recording this, we were saying actually it is nice just to reach out and say thank you. I think when you own your own business, or just any time, actually, a lot of the time we don't say thank you, or we don't give praise, which relates to the inner critic, but we don't give praise enough. So I'm really, you genuinely deserve that praise. I'm really pleased that I reached out to you to say thank you, and you coming back to me straight away to say thank you to me was just a really beautiful thing.
You're getting a lovely dance of very British thank you. No, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, right, thank you.
Never ends.
So Steve, I've introduced why we know each other. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah. Well, my inner critic gives me a hard time because I don't have that eloquent elevator speech that a 47-year-old man should have. So by this age, I should be able to say, oh, I am this, and everyone goes, oh, I know exactly what that is. But I've come to quite enjoy not being able to do that. So I do lots of stuff. I make things, which may come into the label of being an artist. So I paint, I make wooden sculptures, I do conceptual art projects like the world's first silent podcast. I write occasionally, but then I get bored with writing. So I'm occasionally a writer. I run, but less so because my knees are a bit dodgy. I'm a dog owner, I'm a dad and a husband. I do consultancy work around creativity with organizations that are really interested in creativity rather than just pretending, which means I don't have a lot of work. And I do some coaching, and it's all of those things. All of the work I do just because I'm really interested in it. It's totally selfish. I'm interested in exploring who I am in the world and what the world is. And it comes out in all those different ways. So if I was in an elevator in the World Trade Center, that would work, but it's a bit of an elevator speech, to be honest.
I love that though. I love that you're just you're honest and you're following your passions, which more people should be doing, about following their passions rather than doing what they think they should be doing, or coming up with weird Americanized elevator pitches.
Yeah, I'm the actualizer of human potentialism through the medium of art, and it's all.
Oh, there we go. Perfect.
Wow. Yeah. No, I really admire that, actually. Just saying, I do what I do to make myself happy, and I don't need anyone's validation, really.
I have a weird thing where I want to be understood, but I don't want to be misunderstood, and it's impossible. It's an impossible balance to strike. So I've just had to let go of that a bit, and quite enjoy people going, well, how comes you're facilitating dialogue around gender? You're an artist. And then other people saying, how comes you're doing art? I thought you was a coach. And it's, yeah, I'm all of those things and many more. So I've had to let go of being worried about being misunderstood and miscategorized.
That's awesome.
Love that. And there's a power in doing that, in letting go of that.
Yeah, it's hard work. 'Cause I still have moments of going, no, you've got me wrong. But yeah, fair enough. It's just part of life, isn't it?
Yeah, we all do. Well, that's part of the reason I was Googling the inner critic, because it's really, really important, for us doing what we do. But actually just the people that we're both quite similar in the fact that we want to reach like our human potential. Actually, we want to kind of be the most fulfilled we possibly can be. But sometimes you do pigeonhole yourself in certain things, and then you think, oh, it doesn't feel right. So then you go and do other things, but then the inner critic's like, but you said you were this the other day, so you've got to stay doing that. And it's this constant judgment that you put on yourself. I mean, we'll talk about this, but I wouldn't speak to anyone, not even an enemy, the way I sometimes speak to myself. And it's kind of like, but Claire, you were that a minute ago, you pigeonholed it, but so are you a fraud for saying you're that, but not this? So it's all these things that go on in your mind, I think are pretty common and familiar to lots of people, but not necessarily spoken about.
Yeah. And I think that's, for me, I mean, everyone find their own way of doing it, but for me, that's the importance, the difference with what I spoke about in the talk of learning to dance with those voices rather than do battle with them. So if my inner critic says, hold on, the other day you said you were this and now you're this, I'll say to it, come on, keep up. It's like, yeah, okay, fine, thank you. Let me make a note of that and I'll read it sometime. And it's rather than think, I don't know. It's the improviser brain that I have of how can I use this rather than do battle with it. And it's not always easy work. But it all comes from this imagined, perfect, never changing version of ourselves. And can you imagine if you suddenly became permanently the finished article? It would become so boring. So I think it's fine to keep moving. I don't think any other species does this. I mean, there's squirrels running up the tree. I don't think they're going, oh my God, what am I? They don't even think of themselves as squirrels. That's a label we've given them because we have to categorize everything and make everything in order. Like, that's a squirrel. I don't know. If I called it, it wouldn't come to me.
James just calls me when I come to me when I call him.
You do most of the time.
So,
when and why did you start to really become interested in the inner critic?
Well, I think it's been something that's been there forever. I think from age 11, so primary school, I don't remember as much, but it would have been quiet whispers then. And most of it, as you guys will know from your work, is voices of parents and carers from early in life that we introject. But I think secondary school, I would have been aware of it, but not known what it was because I just didn't get on with school. It just didn't work for me. And the way that I am, I will make it my fault. So I am thick and stupid rather than my brain works in a different way to most people, which is all the work that I do now. And then going straight into the world of work and not going to university. But the worst thing was going into the world of work was getting promotions because I'm good at working with people. And I get promotions, and every promotion, there'd be this voice saying, they've made a mistake. They're going to find you out. And particularly when you start getting stuff like shares and cars and directorships and things like that, it's like, oh my God, they're going to find out that I've got a D in A-level geography. And I only did A-level geography so I could go up mountains. It's of no relevance. So again, it's there the whole time. But a breakthrough moment for me was, it's always been people that have spotted something in me that I haven't spotted because I won't be able to spot it myself because I'm too hard on myself. And there's been a number of them in my life. But one was a boss that I had called Sally, who employed me and sort of knew all of my dark, evil secrets about qualifications and all of those things and didn't care. And she paid for me to do some development. And I went to Ashridge Business School to do a master's in organizational change and culture. And the only reason I did that was because the professor who founded it, this guy, Professor Bill Critchley, who's still a friend of mine, he saw something in me and said, you'll be perfect for this. But for 3 years, he kept asking me, do it this year, do it this year. And my inner critic was going, no, you're not academic. And in the end, Bill said to me, this is the last time I'm going to ask you, you doing it or what? And just in that moment, I said, yes, I'll do it. And Bill said, that's your interview, you're in. And then those 2 years were so key, because all of the stuff that I've just described, I wouldn't have been aware of beforehand. It's a story that sounds more eloquent in hindsight. But at Ashridge, it felt like I was in the belly of the beast, this really academic place, all to do with qualifications, where I really didn't feel I belong. But the subject matter I was exploring was fascinating to me, and I kept getting really good marks for writing from my own experience rather than writing academically. And I think it was probably around then that I started to become really interested in, so why have I been scuppering myself in this way? What's been inhibiting me for the last 20 years or something? I think my wilderness years, Eddie Izzard talks about his wilderness years. I think my wilderness years were from 11 to 37. And again, it's good, like earning money and things like that, but never quite being myself. And I wrote my dissertation on spontaneity, because there is only spontaneity. We don't have a script for this moment we're in now, but we fear spontaneity. And in doing that, I learned to perform improvisation in front of crowds, which is terrifyingly brilliant. And again, all of this is an exploration of self-inhibition. And then the bit I talk about in the talk was when I wrote my book about spontaneity and handed it to my mentor, my hero, Keith, who I'm still friends with. We're not enemies, and I'm keen to say that. He's a wonderful man. And he said he didn't like it. And that was a real crushing moment. But I think from going from that high to that real low made me really curious. So it's probably in my mid to late 30s, so 10 years ago, that I just suddenly thought, hold on a minute, what's going on here? Why am I scuppering myself? That would be the lineage of it.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. It's, as we gain more experience and I guess wisdom, and we're able to look back with the benefit of hindsight, we start to recognize the patterns that we're repeating and realize that, oh my God, you just keep sabotaging yourself. What are you doing?
Yeah.
That's like one of the greatest gifts or greatest curses, to be able to see yourself as other people see you.
Yeah. Well, and I often say like stocks and shares, the value of your imagination can go up as well as down. So from the same place where brilliant creative ideas come from can come worry and anxiety. It's the same process, it's just the content's different. So I realized that because I have what society would say is a creative, imaginative mind, I can equally catastrophize and think horrible things about myself. And it was from that point that I just thought, I'm really interested in this. And I started what I called the investigation, which was a little journal thing.
I loved that, Steve.
I've got it up on the shelf, actually. I'm going to treat my inner critic as if I'm doing an investigation into him, as if he's a criminal. And started writing down some of the things that my inner critic would say. And some of the times he'd show up, and some things he'd have an opinion on and other things he wouldn't. And again, not to do anything with it, but to be really curious about it. And then start to draw pictures of him. And if you want to get to know your inner critic, drawing pictures of it is a brilliant way, because as you're drawing it, your inner critic's going, that's a shit picture. That looks nothing like me. And in doing that, I thought, if I can find ways to lure it out of the shadows to get a look at it, I mean, it's the whole Brené Brown stuff of shame lurks in the shadows. So if I can find ways of just luring it out so I'm not attacked by it, I can sort of get a look at it and get to know it. And then the journey carried on from there, where this metaphor of dancing with it came in. The inner critic despises creativity and taking risks and that type of thing. So my massive insight was, well, if I use creativity to get to know the thing that despises my creativity, it sort of short circuits something. And it just evolved from there, really.
I loved your drawings. In the TED talk, you obviously had some of the drawings. It was just amazing, absolutely amazing. I mean, it really did. After I watched that TED talk, I just came away and I was like, right, okay, I'm going to get to know mine. And it has, there's part of my brain that's been, my inner critic has been saying to me, I don't want you to get to know me. I don't want you to know me. I don't want you to fight me. I'm happy lurking over here, shaming you and telling you what you're doing wrong constantly. And actually, it was so wonderful to start just being aware. So not trying to change it, because actually as soon as you start trying to change it, it kicks back. So it's actually just being curious, like you said. And I've started drawing pictures of mine and it did exactly the same thing. That's a shit picture, Claire. That doesn't look anything like me.
And then you can just always ask it back, say, where did you go to art school then? And it's just like, because I think one of the important things is people work out their own way of doing it. But for me, a lot of the macho stuff around defeat your inner critic, slay your inner critic, it's essentially this part of us that Freud called the superego early in life is vital to maintain human connection. Because when we're a tiny baby, other human beings, it's like life or death. So the structure at its heart is trying to look after us. It's just become perverted and warped and distorted. So I thought I'd try and kill it. It feels like some sort of psychological self-harm. But exactly as you said, you hit the nail on the head. Awareness lies at the heart of it. And I spent many years studying Gestalt psychology. And at the heart of Gestalt psychology is the paradoxical theory of change from Arnie Beiser, which says we get more change by becoming more deeply aware of who we already are, rather than striving to be something else. So that's not to poo-poo goal-oriented coaching, because that's obviously can be helpful for some people. But for me, the very act of deepening awareness, you don't need to do anything with it because the work is already done. The act of becoming more aware is the entirety of all you need to do. But in a world obsessed with tangible takeaways and measures, that's fuel for the inner critic, isn't it? So just by drawing and moving and making masks, and in the workshops we use clay just to get to know what our inner critic feels like, its texture, its flavor. I mean, not that we get people to lick clay, but it just actually we might do that. That's a good idea for the workshop.
Your new idea there, Steve.
Yeah, just to gently deepen our awareness of it and get into this dance, because as you say, you get into the dance, I will discover something, and then there will be a comeback, and then from that comeback I will do something. But I start lots of stuff and give up on it because I get bored. But I did Tai Chi for a while because I'm interested in this flow, and Aikido as well, where you're using the energy put towards you to put back, and you get into this dance of how do we use this psychic energy to get into a dance. And that feels, it never has an end. That's what most people don't like about it. And I think I said in the TED talk, I said to Ted, I don't want this to have a conclusion. I want everyone to know that I have not achieved enlightenment here. But I think that's really important, isn't it?
Yes,
the dance
it was
is
so
just
relatable.
part of being human.
It so is. And I love your thing there about awareness and getting to know your inner critic and talk to it and dance with it and play with it. Because there's some people I know just try and suppress it, ignore it, things like that. I always say that you have to find your own way, as you say, but generally that just makes it stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. When you can start actually, as I tell clients, it's like just start talking to it in your head. Go, well, thank you for that. That's interesting. Why would that be the case? Or why do you believe that? You can start to have like a little dialogue, and often, like I think in your talk you said, you realise after a while that actually like it's quite a hollow character. You're going, well, that's good. Okay, so what's your solution for that then? And they just go silent. They're just like, well, yeah, it's easy to spout negativity at me.
Yeah.
But come on, where's the intelligent solution?
So I have to say, Steve, like James and I are really different in this way. I've always been told to, get to know your inner critic, have a chat with it, do this, that, and the other. Never worked for me. So James would be like, just tell it, just get really cross with it. I'm like, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it's taken me to this stage in the last few weeks, totally honestly, to find a way through. This is honestly true, and you need to take this on board. You're inner critic. Through it's sparking an inspiration from watching your TED talk to draw it, and James will notice a massive change in me. I know you will, but like drawing it, talking, writing things, and finding out like the similarities of when it says things.
Yeah.
Because like you said, sometimes it's got an opinion, sometimes it hasn't.
Yeah.
Sometimes it started waking me up in the middle of the night to have a chat, but it's because I'm getting to know it. It doesn't like it. So it's waking me up in the middle of the night. So it's all these little tricks that it's doing. But actually me saying, I love you.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get rid of you. I'm not trying to silence you. I just want to hear what you've got to say.
Yeah. Because it tends to be, for me at least, there's always a grain of truth or a good intention buried really far down. So if, for example, I did a talk, or I was going to do a talk, and my inner critic be going, "This is going to be terrible," or "That was rubbish, everyone hated you," the grain of truth in that probably is, well, it's quite good to connect with other human beings, and they've paid you for money, and it's probably a good idea to give them vaguely what they're after. So that seems like a reasonable adult thing, but it just gets distorted, doesn't it? And for me, I don't think my inner critic uses words anymore, but I can sense it sort of manifests in discomfort and just a feeling of like something's bothering me, but I don't know what. And I think that's just through getting into the subtleties of it. And I often use the metaphor. I used to do loads of scuba diving, not in lovely places like Marbella, but in the UK. So deep, cold, dark, silty
Oh my God.
places.
What were you thinking?
And I used to do not only that wasn't torture enough. I used to do a lot of wreck diving. So I went up to Scapa Flow and dived on the fleet up there. So some real deep technical diving. And the thing is, when you go into a wreck in the UK, it's covered in silt. And you find a little hole to go in, and you go in with your torch, and you go, "Oh, this is wonderful," and you have a look around. But what you don't realize is you're kicking up all the silt behind you. And you get into the middle of the wreck, and you turn around, and you can't get out, and you run out of air and die. Is what happens. So when you're wreck diving in the UK, you tie off a line somewhere safe. And then you go into the wreck a little bit, just that feels comfortable enough, and you tie off another line, and then you might come out. But the next time you go in, you can just follow the line and go a little bit further and tie it off again. So you're gradually doing that, but you can always find your way out. And I think that's the important thing with this work, is to not just swim wildly into the wreck and then get totally lost. It's just those little bits. And each time you do it, you can just notice a little bit more detail, a little bit more subtlety, the subtleties of this. Because if you've got trauma that's unresolved or you're not even aware of, this can tap right into it. So there's again, that's the whole thing of telling everyone to go and fight their inner critic may re-traumatize people as well, I think. So it's lovely you're both interested in the same thing and you're the same species, but you've got your own subtly different ways of dealing with it, and neither's wrong.
It's true. I mean, like I've just kind of tried to beat it into submission for all these years, and strive and goal orientated, get the next thing goal orientated in order to try and silence it. Actually what happens is it's got louder and louder and louder, and it got to a point where I was like, whoa, I'm doing, I've had therapy, I'm doing work on myself, but it is this one thing, this inner bully, I call it, because of, and that triggers something as well, because I was bullied at school. So that an inner bully, kind of, I can relate to it, and actually looking in the mirror, this is what I do now. So my way of doing it is looking in the mirror and having a chat with it, as if to say, look, I'm not trying to get rid of you. I love you, and I know you love me, and I know you're trying to keep me safe because that's what you tried to do. But it's holding me back, and it's affecting lots of other things.
Yeah. And it's, even if we're not aware of it, it will just affect us. But what you described brilliantly there is finding a way to get a little bit of a separation from it. And you can do that through artwork or through drawing or through conversation or through two-chair, or I don't know, maybe you could do it through knitting. I don't know. But it's finding out what is a way that you can get that little bit of separation. So you're not in the grip, but you're able to observe it. And in the workshops I run with Simon Cavicchia, we talk about a really simple process of recognize, identify, and dance or defend. I like the word dance. And it's just attuning to noticing those moments where, hold on, the inner critic showed up for duty here, which for me nowadays isn't really words, but it's just a sense that I've done something wrong. A sense in my body. It's like, did I murder someone yesterday and I've forgotten about it? It's like literally feels like that. And it's like, I know I don't even hurt mosquitoes. So I know that it's very unlikely that A, I've murdered someone, and B, I've forgotten about it. But there's for me, I know my inner critic showed up for duty, because it's like I've got a sense of unease that I've done something wrong and I don't know what it is.
I
That's the
totally
recognize. That's the recognize.
yeah.
Then the identify. So what's the content of this inner critic attack? What might be the words? What are the sensations? And for me, it's normally some sort of constriction or something. And we might identify it through talking with others, through drawing, through looking in the mirror, through whatever way works. And then when you've got that information, you can do something with it. But what we've done is we've sort of distilled the wrong word. Just through that awareness, we've got something to work with rather than this whole I'm shit at everything.
And the shame, you know, like Brené Brown, I love Brené Brown, I love the quote her earlier. It is that shame is the most it's the most powerful emotion, and actually I would say the most negative emotion, if we can call it that, negative, positive, but it's just a horrible, horrible feeling. And I really relate to what you just said, because it's a feel. I honestly feel like at points I've actually felt exactly the same. Mine's my throat.
Yeah.
And it's like, I feel like I've actually done something dreadful and I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
What is it? But actually having that separation, going, oh, that's that feel. I haven't murdered anyone. I haven't done anything really, really badly wrong. You know, I haven't gone into massive, you know, it's just a trauma response in a degree. And then actually just being able to go and look in the mirror and go, okay, all right. What are you trying to tell me? I'm not trying to run away from you.
It's fascinating how we use our imagination and how the inner critic uses your imagination against you with like these broad brushstrokes as well. Massive. You know, like the example of like you're about to go and give a presentation. It'll be like, oh, you're really going to screw this up. You're terrible, and this is a really bad presentation. You're sitting there, and what I'll do, I don't know if it's helpful. I'll just go, yeah, maybe, but here's the thing. I'll be like, do you remember that presentation you gave that you just died? And be like, yeah. But have I given 100 other presentations that people actually enjoyed and liked? Oh yeah, suppose you did. But it's fascinating. Yeah. If you don't bring the awareness to it and kind of have the conversation with it, it will just run away with like the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant, isn't it? Because it brings it down to the specific from the general. So you can be saying I'm rubbish at all presentations ever, but you could think, and I can think of some that I've done that haven't been brilliant. Probably because I was a bit arrogant and didn't really like respond to the audience or tweak it in a way. And so I can say that particular presentation I wasn't quite happy with because of X, Y, and Z. And fair point. But that doesn't mean that everything ever is like that. And I get it. It's a brilliant way to explore rejection and shame is to become an artist, because you experience it every day. Every time someone orders something from my shop, I have the same process of like jumping for joy because it's lovely. It's just someone wanting to buy a piece of work. I stick it in the post, and then I think, how long until they email me to say that they want a refund? And it's like virtually every day. But you get used to it. You get used to it in the end. You think, okay, it's that thing again, isn't it?
I find sharing it with James recently really, really helpful. Rather than it's not there, to actually say, James, I need to just chat to you a minute, let you know what my inner critic's saying right now. Because actually just saying it out loud brings her out into the open. And she can't hide it.
That's the whole thing of shame lurking in the shadows. As soon as we shine a light on it, it sort of dissolves. It's like a vampire. It doesn't particularly like the light. And on the back of my investigation, I just started getting other people to draw them, like in workshops or at talks. And I think there's about 1,000 of them in this online gallery now. And very few people said, I have no idea what you're talking about. Or that everyone sort of could vaguely connect with it. And everyone could then just draw stuff. And in the gallery, there's like from age 6 to 90 people in there of doing it. And the best thing that gallery has done is people to go, oh, it's not just me. I mean, I've had emails on the back of the talk saying, I never knew men had an inner critic. I thought it was just women. And so there's something about us sharing, because the inner critic will use that against us. It's like, if I share that I have this recurring self-doubt or self-inhibition, even as a 47-year-old man, everyone will think I'm stupid and hate me. So like you said, shining this stuff into a light is a threat to that thing, isn't it? But the more, all right, it's not just me. All right, yeah, look at yours. And then it gets fun when people start comparing each other's inner critics and go, oh, my inner critic's not as good as your one. And it's like, Isn't that an amazing thing?
Yeah.
But isn't it interesting that before you talk about it to other people, it almost, I'm sure I've had this, it'll do a double bluff with you. Go, you're going to tell someone about me. You're going to tell someone that you talk to me. They're going to think you're mental.
Yeah.
It plays like it's got its last hand of like calling your bluff about like, no, don't tell anyone else about it.
I think I find that, you know, again, as Brené Brown always said about your vulnerability, I think for me, one of my passions is to be really open and honest about who I am and the struggles I have, because especially in today's society where we're seeing everyone's highlight reels all the time, I think I have, and I know you are as well, but I have like a moral obligation almost to be as transparent as I can be, because I never want anyone to feel alone, and I don't want anyone to ever look at us or me and think, oh, she's got it all sorted, because it just absolutely, that's, you know,
Always
that doesn't
a work in progress.
Yeah, massive work in progress.
This is the subtlety of the inner critic, is people will project that onto you anyway. People project sortedness onto others. And it's one of the things I learned, and I keep mentioning Simon Cavicchia, who's a therapist I run the workshops with. I learned a lot from him. But one of the things is that any experience of judgment or comparison of self or others, both positive and negative, is all part of the same structure. So I may project sortedness onto you guys or onto someone I see on the telly, and because that is a really subtle attack on myself. And the same thing of, this is where, again, if it works for people, fine. We don't need to create an inner champion, because that will just be the inner critic with a party hat on. Because if we're saying, yes, I'm good at this, I'm good at it, it's still judgment and comparison. So there's something around just allowing stuff to be as it is in the moment with minimal judgment or comparison. And that's one of the things that I try and do and teach others to do, is the moment we notice any form of judgment or comparison of self or others, positive or negative, be really curious about that, because that's another little clue. That's like where the veil of the inner critic has showed itself.
I love that.
And
I love that.
When you were saying, James, it made me think that, well, both of what you were saying is rejection isn't good for us as a species. So really, this is how I can get compassion for the inner critic, or my inner critic, is its first job in life was to make sure we weren't rejected. Make sure we weren't, probably not even rejected, make sure we weren't abandoned, because we'd be completely screwed. And in modern society, although it still happens, sadly, it's probably less likely than in cave person times. So that at the heart of it is just saying, no, it's bad, it's dangerous for you to be abandoned. But then it gets distorted as in, don't tell people that you worry about this stuff, because then you'll be abandoned. Don't show your artwork online, because then you'll be abandoned. And it just gets distorted and amplified.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful and so true. So true. So what would you say, Steve, if someone was like, oh, I don't know whether I've got an inner critic, or, you know, you saying there that actually pretty much everyone's like, oh my goodness, I realise that it's not just me, and actually most people are saying, I have one too. How do you know if your inner critic is kind of rampant?
Right. I don't know is the honest answer, because I can only know for me. So I think it's just tuning into the signs that it's checking in for duty. So a certain thought, and I had it was a couple of months ago. I was doing loads of podcasts and loads of talks, and I just thought everyone was thinking everything was shit, and no one's come back to me and said that, so I'm assuming it's not true. But I was just noticing that, and it's like, okay, there's something going on here, but I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm just going to stay tuned to it. So for me, I know, and there's that process of recognizing, identifying, and dancing. Is that just tuning and cultivating that awareness for the real subtle whispers, I think, is really important. And then if people say to me, well, I haven't got an inner critic, everything's fine, I go, all right, no problem. Don't worry about it then. It's psychologically, I suspect there's something there, but if it's not a problem for you, then don't worry about it.
Exactly. Lovely. And what would you say? I'm going to put you on the spot here. What would you say your 3 tips for people who think they're struggling with their inner critic? Probably what you've just said, actually. Again, you know, like actually bringing awareness to it. Kind of really covered that off. But yeah, just 3 tips. Anything over and above what you've already mentioned about kind of becoming aware when it's on duty, bringing awareness to it, have the feeling of it. Is there anything else like you would give people as nuggets of wisdom of how to start dancing with it?
Yeah. Well, I think that the danger of saying about this idea of recognizing, identifying, and dancing is it implies that that's actually a real model, and it's not. It's a map. It's a convenient map. So hold it lightly. The same as all theories, rubbish. It's just sometimes useful. But in that recognize bit, I think that's the important thing, is to tune into. That's just cultivating that awareness, but not just in our heads. We're such a head-dominated society, a language-dominated society. If you guys may be aware of it, the whole idea of polyvagal theory of the vagus nerve, 80% of the information in that massive nerve is bottom up, transmits information from the body to the brain. So in this recognize, it's tune in all the subtle ways. What are the thoughts? What are the senses? What are the emotions? What are the sensations? What are the feelings? What's the instinctive stuff that shows you, hold on, there's some sort of judgment or comparison going on here. And then in terms of identifying, again, you can write down stuff, you can journal, but again, that's just really limited, because that's limiting it to just words. Mess about with a lump of clay, or dance, or move, or find other ways of exploring what that's about. And then, like I say, the dance bit, for some people it may be, and this is very cultural as well, for some people it may be helpful to go, yeah, fuck you, to the inner critic. It's fine. If that helps, then brilliant. But for me, yeah. But for me, it's I like engaging with it as like a subversive guerrilla artist. So it's like, okay, they've given me that. How can I use what they've just given me to annoy it? It's like, that's where the talk came from, is this is becoming really interesting. Can I find the biggest stage possible to out my inner critic? Because I know it will really annoy him. And that's what the dance is. Yeah. So I think it's the subtleties of that. And you cannot get it wrong. That's the other thing, is if you're thinking none of this is working, think, well, hold on, who's telling me that? Because it's not me. Yeah.
I see that. Sometimes I turn to James, oh, it's not working now. He's like, who's that talking?
It's like, oh, I'm really rubbish at this inner critic stuff. I'm terrible at this inner critic stuff. Hold on a minute. Whose voice is that? Hold on.
I know.
Hold on. Yeah.
I know. It's just so interesting, isn't it? I think you say about, you know, if it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother you. I think, you know, we had a client that did a client interview with us a little while ago. He said something really beautiful. He said, I won't die wondering.
Yeah.
You know, that's what pushes him forward to try new things, to get to know himself and to change. And he said, I won't die wondering. So for me, you know, you're probably that person or you're not. It's like, I want to know what's holding me back. I've got this kind of self-discovery gene that I'm like, okay, I'm not experiencing life, not in the future, but I'm not experiencing life now in a way I would love to experience it. So what's going on there?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a real subtle thing in there that I wrote about a few years ago, of, if we think of the thing we want to avoid is never developing. Yeah. So of just stagnating. I'm not saying that's wrong, but that may be the thing we want to avoid, which is why most people want to do self-development. The thing we're aiming for is this insatiable curiosity, I think. But the near enemy of that is seeking because we feel deficient. So I realized after I did my master's at Ashridge, the professor was saying, oh, you should come and do a PhD. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to do a PhD. I'm going to do a PhD. And I signed up for it and had an interview. And then I thought, I'm only doing this because I don't feel good enough. And if I did complete the PhD, I still wouldn't feel good enough. And so that's that seeking behavior, I think, that is, for me, is a subtle form of doing self-development because I think I'm deficient, which is a different energy, I think, to I'm doing this because I'm really curious. I'm just genuinely curious. And I never want to find the answer. I want to find the question behind the question behind the question. I said years ago in a talk, an exclamation mark is a question mark with rigor mortis. It's dead. finding answers are dead ends. Concrete answers is a delusion. But find the question behind the question. So what does then this open? And it's like little Russian dolls. And it's the same with the inner critic work. Because I think, I don't know, you may as well be dead if you reach the answers. For me, at least.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah, and it's actually for me, it's just like this constant journey. It is a journey of just kind of, it is letting go of what I thought I was to a degree, what I thought I built it myself to be, what I think I want as well, what I think makes up me.
Yeah.
So it's at times I think some people, you know, do put that off and are afraid to do that stuff because it's that whole thing about being rejected. It's almost like you rejecting yourself. You're going to get dragged into this black hole. People feel they're going to be dragged into this black hole, but actually, that hole is there's a light in there that's actually the truth of who you really are.
And there could be some really difficult real stuff. So if one's gone through their whole life not being themselves and presenting some illusion, you've no doubt surrounded yourself by people and jobs and everything else that have responded to that. So there is a real danger of, if you suddenly go, oh, this is me, that those are no longer friends, or I mean, realistically, because it's all been built on an illusion. So there is a real tangible side to it as well. But it's the subtle loops of the inner critic are brilliant. Like giving yourself a hard time about giving yourself a hard time, of not doing the inner critic work very well. And it's amazing. I mean, my answer to everything is, people say, what's the key to being better at working with uncertainty? Or what's the key to creativity? Or what's the key to tangential thinking? And what's the key to the inner critic? And my answer to all of them would be to get really good at not knowing, at the practice of not knowing. The follow-up question that is normally, how do I do that? Which is ironic, isn't it? Because how do I get good at not knowing? It's like, I don't know. The practice of not knowing is so important, because that's what, if we don't know, we instinctively wonder and become curious and improvise and adventure. So getting good at not knowing, the practice of not knowing, or getting comfortable with the uncomfortableness of not knowing, I think is at the heart of what it means to be human, because we don't know. You zoom out from our day-to-day patterning, we soon reach a threshold where we realize none of us got a fucking clue what we're doing. And that's okay. It doesn't stress the field mice. It doesn't stress the fish and the eagles. They're just, they're fine with it. So that would be my other thing, is that recognize, identify, dance, and then just practice not knowing.
Yeah. I love that.
Oh, I love that.
Steve,
thank
amazing.
you so much.
No, thank you.
Wise words.
You are very, very wise man. Thank you so much. Steve, so firstly, I would like to say, everyone that is resonating with this really needs to check out. I'm going to actually put the link to Steve's TED Talk in the show notes. So go and watch this. It's short, really, really impactful. It was just amazing. It's
definitely worth watching.
It's so great. But how else can people find out about some of the creative work you do, some of the other stuff you do, all these myriads of stuff that you do? Where's the best place for them to go to?
The myriad of things, and this is where I should have a sensible answer to this, but I don't. I hang out on Instagram most of the time, which is at SteveXOH, which is pronounced Steve Zor, but people pronounce it all different ways. And there's a long story about a car number plate where I got that. But yeah, at SteveXOH on Instagram, all of my artwork is. And then there's a website that's like a portal into my mind, really, and which is canscorpionsmoke.com. So canscorpionsmoke, all one word.com. Or if you type Can Scorpion Smoke into Google, there's only one website called that. And someone described my website. Someone described my website like a trip to IKEA. They said it's like you go there looking for something, you don't find what you want, but you leave with a load of stuff you didn't know you needed. So there you go. It's exactly how you should design a website, because it's it embodies.
Well, exactly, because we always say about just on Facebook, on these social media channels, this is how you should live your life. This is how you should do your business. This is like, so I love the fact that your website, you just explained it, that it's like IKEA. It's amazing.
Yeah, and there's probably, in the however many years on Instagram, there may be one photo of me on Instagram. Everyone says that's not how you're supposed to use Instagram. It's like, I don't care.
I don't care. Exactly.
Drawings
I love that.
and pictures. Yeah.
So we are going to put those notes, the link to the YouTube channel and the link to, because obviously I've got your web address, I will pop that on there, and I'll also put your Instagram handle, whatever they call it. I don't even know, don't care. But I'll pop that on there as well. Steve, thank you so much. I'm so glad I reached out to you. It's just beautiful.
No, thank you. It's been a lovely conversation, and every time that I talk about this, I uncover new layers, so it's helpful for me too.
Thank you.
Yeah. You've been listening to the Midlife Mentors with Claire and James Davis.
We'd love to hear from you. So drop us a line at info@themidlifementors.com with any questions or topic suggestions.
And make sure you join us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can find us under the Midlife Mentors.
Yeah.